Yesterday, we went over the first four. We went over translations, vertical translations, horizontal, we did reflections, and the last two rows now we're going to fill in. If you're absent, you're going to go back and watch the video for the first four on assignment 4. You're welcome. So now, the last two types of transformations have to do with multiplication. Watch this. So, for the first row, remember this column has to do with linear functions, this one's absolute value functions, and this is the effects of the transformations. Watch what happens. So for here, let's go and write f of x equals, second to the last row. What if we get this number a, like just any number, let's call it a, and we multiply it by x? In other words, here's your parent. What if we multiply that x by some number a? What's going to happen? And let's do the same with the absolute value. Do this with me. What the heck is going to happen here? Look at that. So a is just any number. What if I take any number and multiply by that x? What is it going to do to the graph? Well, watch and see. I'm going to take an absolute value function and I'm going to graph it, and I already did. Look at it on my Desmos. Check this out. All right. I got two absolute value functions here. One's red, one's green. Phone's away right now. Now look what I did. Make sure some projector mode is good. All right, watch. Look at the top function in red. I put some value a outside of absolute value x minus 6. And look what I have here. I have this little slider where the a is constantly moving. The a multiplied by this is constantly moving for the red function. So right now, look at the red function. Let me zoom in on that. So look at, when a, let me pause it. Right now, a is 3.94. Watch when the a gets bigger. This value, it gets bigger. Look at what happens to the absolute value function. It's getting bigger. It's getting bigger. Actually, it's getting smaller there. Now it's getting bigger than 1, 2, 3. Now look what's going on. When a gets bigger, there's a vertical stretch going on. It's getting thinner. When a gets smaller, right, it's widening up. When a gets smaller, look at when a becomes a fraction. In other words, less than 1. Look, when a becomes less than 1, look at how this is going to be smashed vertically. I'm going to just smash this so it's going to open up. Watch. It smashes. So there's a vertical movement going on with the red. Vertical stretch versus now, look at as a gets smaller. As a gets smaller, there's a vertical shrinking, especially if a gets lower than 1. Okay, so that's the red one. That's if a is outside the grouping symbol. The one you just wrote down is a is inside the grouping symbol. Look at that. So let's just go back to the graph. The one where a is inside the grouping symbol is the green graph. Let me focus on the green graph. Watch this. Just focus on the green. Don't worry about the red right now. Well, let me put both of them up. They kind of look the same, but there's something different going on with both of them. The green graph where the a is inside versus the red graph where the a is outside. What's different about them? Can someone figure out what's different? What's going on? Watch. Look at both. Look at how the a's change. Something's going on with one that's not going on with the other. Can you guys spot it out? What's moving? Tell me. Can you be specific? What's moving on the green? Okay, wait, go us first. What's moving on the green one? Okay, so notice the green, the point right here is moving, but what's staying still on the green one? There's something that's not moving on the green. Can you spot it out? I think you said over here. What's not moving on the green? Right. What is that point called when a graph crosses the y-axis? There's a name for that. It's a fancy word. You've seen the math 1 and math 2. called a y-intercept. So on the green graph, let me slow it down too. I can slow this down. On the green graph, the y-intercept doesn't change. What about on the red graph? What's not changing? The x what? The x-intercept's not changing. Look at the red one. They kind of look similar, but there's something different going on with both graphs. Now, the one you just wrote down, the A is inside, so we're dealing with the green one now. And look what's going on. Look what's going on. Since it has a y-intercept that doesn't change, what's going on here is a horizontal stretch or shrink. In other words, movement going left and right as opposed to movement going up and down. So on the green one, we're dealing with horizontal shrinks and stretches. The red one, we're dealing with vertical shrinks and stretches. So watch this. Look at the green. When A gets bigger, we're talking about a horizontal shrink. We're shrinking. But notice when A gets smaller, and especially a fraction, notice when A gets less than 1 and bigger than 0. This is going to be a horizontal stretch. Watch. Let me pause it. Watch when the A gets below 1. 3, 2, 1. Coming up. Now, when it gets to a fraction less than 1, it's going to horizontally, left and right movement, horizontally stretch. Notice that. The red is vertically shrinking. The green is horizontally stretching, and vice versa. So it matters whether the A is inside or outside. Let's go back to our notes. Here we go. Stay with me. You guys are doing excellent. So, what are we going to write right here? What is the effect? Watch this. AC will turn on right now. Sorry about that. So, the effect is, last two now. Stay with me.
Uh-oh, you dropped your clicker.
The effect is a horizontal, here we go, horizontal stretch. Watch this now, by a factor, write this in. Right, so second to the last, second last. So if you're asking me to say we're on the second to last one. Horizontal stretch by a factor of, watch this now, 1 over A. Whatever that number is, A is a factor of 1 over that, and I'll explain that tomorrow. Right now, you just follow directions, follow orders. It's going to be by a factor of 1 over whatever that number A is. And I'll go over that right now. If, watch this now, if A is a fraction. If A is less than 1 and greater than 0, look at it. If A is greater than 0, but less than 1. That's just a fancy schmancy way of saying if A is a fraction. If A is a fraction, then you're going to have a horizontal stretch of the graph. It's going to stretch horizontally by a factor of 1 over A. But what if it's greater than 1? What if it's not a fraction, in other words? Well, it's going to be this. It's going to be a horizontal shrink. If A is not a fraction, that means A is greater than 1. Write that in there. There's the moral of the story. There's the effect. Write nice, neat notes, because this Friday's quiz, you're going to see this. Uh-oh, he's getting angry. I see.
You're giving this quiz on Friday.
I'm sorry. He's threatening me. Don't worry, I'll give you an A. Last one. What if A, watch this, what if A is on the outside of the grouping symbol? Check this out. F of x equals, watch this now, A grouping symbol x in parentheses for linear, or A grouping symbol absolute value symbol, boom. What happens there now? This would be the red graph we just looked at. This would be the green graph we just looked at. Well, let's summarize. Vertical. So it would be here vertical stretch, watch this now, by a factor of A only, not 1 over A, just A. Right, Valdez, watch this. If, stay with me now, if A is a fraction, if, watch this, remember here's a fancy way to write a fraction, if A is greater than 0, less than 1, comma, and it's going to be a vertical shrink if A is not a fraction. That means A is greater than 1. Right, now let me show you how to use this crap. It's important crap though.
Wait.
Sure. Uh-oh, still angry? All right, watch this now. One last time. One last time. A outside. If A is outside, horizontal. Look at the y-intercept stays the same. Gentlemen, here we go. Horizontal stretch or shrink for the green. If A is on the inside, actually the other way around. If A is on the outside, it's vertical. That's the red one here. Vertical stretch or shrink. Let me fast forward this, make it quicker. It's okay. Vertical. X-intercept stays the same. Green, y-intercept stays the same. That's horizontal stretch or shrink. Stretch, shrink. Stretch, shrink. Green's horizontal, red's vertical. Here we go. Flip your page over. Flip your page over. Go to write this on top of the page, on top of your note guide. Go to write, describe the transformation in relation to the parent. Look at number 1 first. Describe the transformation in relation to the parent. So go right, number 1, f of x equals 1/3, absolute value 1/3 x. All right, now, as we do this, this is going to be your best friend. This note guide will be your best friend for what we're about to do. So you want to become very familiar with what you just wrote and have it and hold it, cherish it, hold it very dear to your heart. I hear the sound of someone taking me over again.
No.
Here we go. Let's see. That's absolute value, so it's saying what's the transformation here taking place in relation, in comparison to the parent? The parent is, let's see, there's the parent. F of x equals absolute value of x. So from the parent to this child, what's taking place? Well, let's look. I got something being multiplied by x in the inside of the grouping symbol. Let's see, that's going to come all the way down here. It's going to be the second to the last case. It's going to be this situation right here. It's either a stretch or a shrink horizontally. The question is now, what is A? Is A a fraction or is A greater than 1? Let's look. A is a fraction. Okay? So what's going to be then? Watch. Stretch by a factor of 1 over A if A is a fraction. Here it is. So it's going to be a horizontal stretch. Thank you, Garcia. It's going to be a horizontal stretch by a factor of 1 over A. Watch it. Write it with me. Here we go. We're going to answer the question. Write this down. Horizontal stretch by a factor of, here we go, gentlemen, please. By a factor of 1 over A. But A is already a fraction, so how are we going to write 1 over A if A is already a fraction? Watch this. 1 over A, well, that's 1 over 1/3. That's kind of funky. A is 1/3. Look, here's your A value. It's 1/3. So 1 over 1/3 is the same as 1 over A. So how do you take a number like 1 and divide it by 1/3? How do you divide by fractions? That's a middle school question. 1 divided by a fraction, well, if I look at this little board behind Ibarra and in front of Rodriguez, this is a little fraction review. Dividing by fractions, that means you multiply by the reciprocal. Watch this. So 1 divided by 1/3 is the same as 1 times the reciprocal of 1/3 is 3 over 1. What's 1 times 3? 3. So it's horizontal stretch by a factor of 3. We're done. Right now, this whole 1 over A thing, don't worry about trying to understand that. Right now, just copy your notes and follow orders. Tomorrow, I'm going to go over why it's 1 over A. What the heck that means. Right now, just go straight by the book, follow directions. Don't get confused. So what did I do? What am I thinking? I looked at the A value. I went to my notes. Okay, was the A in the inside or was it the A in the outside? It was obviously the inside. And then I asked myself, is the A a fraction or is the A bigger than 1? That's the main question. Well, A was a fraction, therefore it's a horizontal stretch. All you're going to be doing is following orders. Easy stuff. Watch. Number 2. Write this down. We're going to do 4 quick examples. Here we go. Number 2. F of x equals negative absolute value x plus 9 plus 1. Write that down. Come on, Medina. You got this. Graduates, potential graduates, this is easy, just focus. You gotta put in the work. It's easy if you just focus. If you start sleeping, you're gonna get lost quick. You're gonna fall off the train. I don't want you to fall off the train. All right. How does this compare to the parent? Here's a parent again. There's a parent. We have a negative symbol. We have a 9 being added to the x, and we have a 1 being added to the whole thing outside the parentheses. There's a lot of stuff going on. In other words, there's 3 things going on. There's a negative, there's the 9, there's the 1, so this transformation is going to have 3 things going on. Let's deal with the negative first. The negative is outside, so what does that correspond with? Let's see. On our notes, here we are. Negative is outside, so that's going to be a reflection in the x-axis. There's our first sentence. Go to right. Reflection, I'll put it in black here. Reflection in x-axis. Sentence 1. Math 2 students, we did this a little bit last year. This should be a review for you. How about the plus 9? Let me look at my notes. Which one has to do with adding something inside parentheses or inside grouping symbols? Here we are. The minus h. Horizontal translation, moving horizontally h units to the right and left if h is positive. H is positive. So this is going to be a horizontal, write it with me, horizontal translation. You can abbreviate if you want. Horizontal translation, 9 units. To the left or to the right? The left. There's our second sentence. Last but not least, what about the 1 now? Let me go to my notes. Which one has something to do with adding stuff outside the parentheses? Right here, I look at the k value. The k. Upward if k is positive, down if k is negative. Nice. We're going to go up 1, huh? So go to right upward. I'll put vertical translation. Upward. How many units? 1 unit. We're rocking and rolling, you guys. You guys are true Math 3 students. You guys can become masters of manipulating functions. That's huge. You see it now, huh? Number 3. Two more quick ones.
Hey, what does it say after vertical? What does it say after vertical?
Translation. So I'm abbreviating translations as trans. All right. Vertical translation upward 1 unit. Thank you. Next one I'll put in red. Any Angel fans in here? Now's your time. What parent function are we dealing with here on number 3? It's not absolute value, but what? What's the parent here? Linear, huh? Okay, it's this one.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with linear. Here we go. Here we go. So the parent looks like this. It's an x. So we got to describe the negative, we got to describe the 2, and we got to describe that 2. So now, this negative is really like a negative 1. A negative 1 times a 2, and then an x. That's really what's going on right here. So which one has a negative 1 right next to the x without any grouping symbol? Right here. It's this one. Because there's no grouping symbol, pay attention here, because there's no grouping symbol, you have to interpret that as a negative inside directly being multiplied by the x inside parentheses. So I'm dealing with a reflection. I'm dealing with a reflection in the y-axis. Because a negative is being directly multiplied by the x, there's nothing separating it. There's no parentheses or grouping symbol separating it. Thank you, gentlemen. Here we go. So this will be reflection in y-axis. Okay, how about the 2 now?
The plastic?
No, right here. Just the 2 being multiplied. So right, I just dealt with the negative. You have to deal with the negative separate then from the 2. Now the 2 is being directly multiplied by the x. So let's see. Directly multiplied by the x, it wouldn't be this one, it'd be this one, so it's going to be a horizontal stretch or shrink, depending on whether a is a fraction or not. Malia, stay with me, we're almost done.
Oh my god.
Is a fraction or not?
No.
No. So, it's going to be a horizontal shrink by a factor of 1 over a. Watch this. Write it with me. Horizontal shrink now by a factor of 1 over, what is a? What's a here?
2.
Thank you. So 1/2. Done.
How
guys are
did you
doing
get
one.
the 1 over 2?
Because I just following directions right now. Tomorrow I'm going to get into detail why. Right now, I'm just following those directions right here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Tomorrow I'm going to get into explain why it's 1 over a. You'll see why. I'm going to show you a picture of a graph being transformed. You'll see. Right now, just follow orders. Last thing now.
The last one?
Plus 2. What's that going to do? Help!
I'll do that side up.
It's going to set up scale units.
Vertical, translation, upward. You guys are awesome. 2 units. I underestimated you guys. You guys are digging in. I love it. Via. Someone's got to inject caffeine to Via during lunchtime. I think he's a morning person. In the summertime, he was on it in the summer. I had him early in the morning, but after lunch,
That's because I only have 4 hours of sleep.
you're useless after lunch, man. Come on.
Sorry.
No, what he knows I'm playing. He knows.
If I do table, it's because
He knows I'm playing.
I get really bored taking notes. But tables and everything else I can do correctly.
Okay, I got you. Here we go. Last one.
Okay.
Oh, I already know that.
Rodriguez, I'm playing.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, no.
Thank you. All right. Me and him go way back. He knows I'm
Oh
playing.
my
All right.
god. Oh my god.
F of x equals x. Here we go. Here's a parent. There's no absolute value, so I know it's linear. I'm going to describe the 8, and I'm describing the coefficient of x of 1/2. So in other words, just 2 sentences now. Here we go.
Can you turn on the air? It's like making me very tired.
No, next question.
Okay, fine.
Request.
No, she said,
No,
she said
what the
can you?
heck?
She said, can you?
May you?
May you please? I said please.
No, next question. Here we go. A is being multiplied by the x.
That's hard.
Notice there's no grouping symbol separating A and the x, so I'm dealing with, boom, another horizontal stretch or shrink depending on whether A is a fraction. Is A a fraction?
Yeah.
Indeed it is. It's a fraction, so I'm just following orders now. If it's a fraction, we're dealing with a stretch, horizontal stretch by a factor of 1 over A. Okay, horizontal stretch by a factor of 1 over A. Let's get back over there. So, horizontal, sorry for my chicken scratch, horizontal stretch by a factor of, here we go now, 1 over A. What's A?
2.
1/2.
1/2.
So 1 over 1/2 becomes, though, what you just said,
2.
2. So it's by a factor of 2. You don't have to show this work, by the way. It's right by a factor of 2. All right. So we dealt with the 1/2. We got the plus 8. That's going to be a what? Help, please. Thank you. Vertical, I'm abbreviating now. My hand's getting a hand cramp here. Vertical translation. Upward.
8 units.
8 units. We're rocking and rolling. Who likes rock and roll?
I feel like every day.
I hear the sound of someone who should have graduated a long time ago from India. Let's get our credits. Let's get our credits. Yeah.